Hello everyone, Prime here, and you guys remember the Thor movie that released in 2011? I really liked the movie. I had a few problems with it, but you know, it had its upsides, it had its good points. But I always had a few problems with it, and more importantly than my issues with the movie, mythology had some massive issues with the movie. Namely, Norse mythology. So today we're going to be talking about those issues that Norse mythology had with this movie, and let's jump into it. First thing that you'll notice about the movie is that everyone's speaking in English, which had to be done. There's no way like a mass audience could really understand. Okay, well, to be fair, a mass audience could, but the audience to the scope that Marvel was expecting could understand the movie if it wasn't in English. That's fair enough. Okay, that's fine. But we're talking about old Germanic or Scandinavian folklore here. We couldn't have some actors from that part of the world play some of these roles. I'm sure, don't get me wrong, Chris Hemsworth is a very worthy Thor. At least I thought so immediately. I think that a bit less now, but it's too late to unestablish those thoughts in my mind. He's a fairly worthy Thor, for the most part. But would it have been so hard to find a nice actor with the right accent still speaking in English? Vikings did it, so couldn't have been that difficult. And whilst we're on the topic of Thor and nitpicking Thor, there's a few other issues. First and foremost, whilst you've got the body build and general facial look of Thor and bodily look of Thor pretty nice and awesome, he wasn't blonde. That's a bit immersion breaking, and I'm sure that Norse mythology does not like that tiny little technicality Marvel decided to just throw in there because, yes, let's just make Thor blonde to appeal to a mass audience, or for whatever reason. Or perhaps, you know, just because we chose Chris Hemsworth. Yes, we gain some, we lose some, okay, give and take. But still, does Marvel really hate gingers that much? The last thing that the lore has to say with Thor is his hammer. You see, whilst Loki and Thor are children, we can see the hammer in the background as the two boys are walking away with Odin out of whichever room they were in Asgard. Problem with this is in the original mythology, Loki, thanks to him getting himself into a bit of trouble, a bit of a dare or bet against some dwarves, through one method or another, has these dwarves craft the hammer Mjolnir. Whereas in the Marvel Universe, it's just laying around randomly without too much explanation as to how it was created. It's just there. So that begs the question, A, how was it even created? Was it created in the same way through dwarves? B, really? You're going to take away that cool backstory for Mjolnir as well? There's other backstories that you're going to take away in this movie. Come on. And see, of course, I get it. It probably was to help set up Jane Foster as the love interest of Thor, or that other character that was part of Thor's band of warriors, whose name escapes me, I apologize. But still, come on. No, lore is not happy with you. Okay, I think we're done with Thor now, so let's move on to Loki's origin story, shall we? In the Marvel Universe movie, Loki is the youngest son. Okay, in the Marvel Universe, he's the youngest son of Lothé. In the movie, he seems to be the only son that we're introduced to, so let's just go ahead and assume that he's the only son of Lothé, and Lothé is the king of the Frost Giants, making Loki the heir to Jotunheim. See, now, the mythology has a massive issue with this, because technically, the Marvel Universe is essentially trying to say that, well, Thor, Odin, and Loki have no blood ties whatsoever, but in Norse mythology, this isn't quite the case. Yes, Loki is still part frost giant or giant, but so is Odin, and so is Thor. And the thing about this is that, whilst Loki, yes, still wasn't technically Thor's brother, he was still his uncle. He was still blood related to him in that way. He was Odin's brother, technically, or more closer in that sense to Odin than Thor. So, you see the problem here. Difference in, I suppose, really, they still had a similar kind of bond to what we see in the movie, but still. Fitting how thunder interrupts me there, but there you go. Mythology doesn't like that either. Also, Odin changes the skin color of Loki to make him appear more, you know, fleshy, human-y, gaudy. So the deception kind of works there. I'm assuming that's just a bit of trickery to mask, Loki's true identity. I'm sure he doesn't actually still have any blood ties to Thor or Odin because of that. But there you go. Now here's a big problem. Big problem. God of law and order was Tyr in Norse mythology. He doesn't get any mention or say here. There's no... Odin acts as the judge, the jury, and I'm not sure if he's also the executioner, but to be fair, in a society like Asgard's, would you really need much of an executioner, considering the fact that Asgard technically should be full of the dead warriors from Earth that were honored in battle? But that's a bit of a side-trekky thing. We might get back to that later, but no Tyr? Come on, really, Marvel? You could have had Tyr be the... I get it, plot, but still, come on, at least mention the guy. We now have probably the main thing that bothered me after I was rewatching this entire movie, and that's simply one of the most important aspects of Odin's character. I say character. Can I say character? I'm going to say character. It feels wrong to say character, but the most important aspects of Odin, his eye. In the movie, prior to the massive battle with the Frost Giants, massive battle set up between the gods and the Frost Giants, Odin has 2 eyes. Near enough the end of this conflict, there is a massive hole where one of Odin's eyes should be. It's gone. We don't know where it's gone, so we're just left to assume that he lost it in the fighting. As it's a pretty fresh wound. It seems like it's been freshly removed. So my question is, because I'm making the assumption that it's removed in battle, why did you take away that important aspect of Odin? You see, he lost his eye, in case you didn't know, in his original mythology, because he traded it with Mimir, who guarded over this great well of all of the information and knowledge and insight you could possibly imagine or want in the cosmos. In this well, he guarded over this well's waters. Odin trades one of his eyes for a drink from this well and then gains a bunch of knowledge from this well. He also does hang himself from Yggdrasil for quite a few days without food or water in order to gain some more knowledge, the knowledge of some runes. But by drinking this drink from the well of Mimir, he also gained a ton of knowledge. And he does all of these things in order to try and prevent or preserve himself, and not just necessarily himself, but his family and loved ones in Asgard and the 9 realms and everything from Ragnarok. That's the whole motivation for all of this. Well, by taking away that aspect of the character, you take away one of his greatest his greatest struggle, the greatest, most interesting part of his character, his whole struggle with life and his fate and the inevitability of death. And you do it just to make him look cool in one scene and then cool throughout the rest of the movie just so you can have an awesome eye patch? Without really giving that eye patch the same depth? It cheapens that look to an amazing degree once you know the actual lore behind it. So, why, Marvel? No! Go back in time, Marvel. Invent a time. You're rich, so I'm sure you should be able to pull this off, no problem. Go back in time. Fix your mistakes. Slap yourselves collectively in the face. Your writers, whoever came up with this terrible part of the story. Slap them in the face. Everyone at the company, go ahead and slap this person in the face. Wake them up somehow, I don't know. Do something. Fix this mess. Then come back. Pat yourselves on the back. And hopefully you haven't made similar, more horrifying mistakes in Thor Ragnarok. Because so help me God, I'll be very depressed. But despite all the doom and gloom, we're not going to end it on a bad, sad note. There are some cool things in the movie that I actually did enjoy. Before we get into that, one last thing, which I slightly touched on, said we'd get back to though. Everyone in Asgard, when you look across the people celebrating Thor's coronation as new king in Asgard, everyone's sort of wearing special robes and, celebratory, like, party-style gear. Just one question, and I hope to God Asgard isn't full of just non-war. Like, everyone at that celebration actually did somehow prove themselves on the battlefield, or just prove themselves worthy to dine with Odin in his halls, the mighty Valhalla. If they're just there, fix that as well. But okay, just get that minor detail out of the way because, of course, we don't know everything about the entirety, or I wasn't able to look up everything about you know, the background of the Marvel Universe here. It is a separate universe from the Norse mythology, and I believe Stan Lee, like, person who drew up all these Marvel comics, the mind behind Marvel, essentially said that he adapted some things from the mythology so that Thor and all of these things from Norse mythology could work within the Marvel Universe. Because, of course, having a god in a universe like Marvel doesn't really work. It would cheapen the story a lot. It's the same problem as Superman, you know? There's not too much you can do to these characters that would have any sort of meaningful impact, because they're these godly beings. You can't have too many conflicts with them unless, you know, you're having conflicts with other godly beings, because I believe only the gods could kill the gods, unless, well, the frost giants could also kill the gods, I'm assuming, but, you know, it's just boundaries you can't cross, and it's very tricky having these sorts of characters in these sorts of stories. A lot of other themes, and they're also typically not very relatable. Yeah, I suppose they did try in this movie to try and make Thor a bit more relatable than not, but there you go. Anyways, back to the more positive side of this. Two things I liked about the movie is, first, throughout, like, Norse mythology, whenever something would go wrong, or whenever something wasn't right, Thor lost his hammer, he instantly went to Loki. He's like, "What, Loki, what the F, man? Where's my hammer?" And pretty much, there's that kind of callback to that kind of the mischievous side of Loki. Even though it's not really shown in the movie, it is at least referenced, which is nice. I would have preferred it if it was actually showed, but, you know, they focused on different themes and did different things. Whatever. Okay, whatever. I suppose that's kind of me playing devil's advocate a bit, but what are you going to do? I like to see things visualized, not just mentioned. But there you go. Other thing that was really, really nice is, whilst I was researching some of Thor's mythology and just things about Thor, a certain thing about the kind of roles within Norse society, and not just necessarily Norse societies, but just mythological societies in general, was mentioned. How you've got, like, a class system that essentially is more of a role system than anything else. Thor and Odin are part of two different separate parts of the class system. Thor being part of a more warrior class, whereas Odin is part of the more all-powerful, all-knowing controller and lord of the sort of magic and laws of the universe-style class of being within the society. They butt heads a lot. I go into a lot more detail and elaborate a lot better in the actual video, audio for which I haven't recorded yet because script is just being, well, I say script, notes for which are just being dusted off, but here you go. Yes, there's a bit of that conflict near the start of the movie, and I'm sure, of course, part of that is to just, you know, show Thor's sort of coming of age, character growth, development stuff. But if they didn't mean to do that, then whatever. It's still in the movie, so they're still getting props regardless. It's there. Good job. Okay, good. Well, we've reached the end of the video. Hope you did enjoy this. It's a bit different. If you want to see more, I can do this for the Dark World, and then, of course, when Thor Ragnarok comes out, we can do this for that movie as well. So, yeah, let me know if you want me to do that, though, and tell me what you thought of this in the comments section below. Hope you enjoyed this video a lot. If you did, go ahead and leave a like. If you didn't, dislike button's there as well. And, till the next video, very, very nice day. I've been Prime, and I'll see you in a few. Bye-bye. Okay, good. Now, I think we're done with Thor for a bit. So let's move on to Lokins.